Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the studies. Yesterday, we were discussing about the demand which is done for the reformation of Security Council, and in this regard, we were discussing the reforms which are demanded in the structure of Security Council. There are five permanent members, and now it is demanded that the number of permanent members should be increased. And on that regard, we have seen how the criteria is being fixed and what are the loopholes or weaknesses of those criteria. And now we will switch to uh, another demand of reform, which is related to the nature of membership. Actually, what is the system of working in the Security Council is that five members are there who are permanent, and these are the countries which were very much powerful, which were the most powerful at the time of at that time when the UN was coming into existence, and that is the reason that these five permanent members have been not only given the permanence of seat, but also they have been given veto power. So now it is considered that this veto power is highly undemocratic, and it is based on the principle of inequality. So many are of the view that veto power should be abolished. There should not be veto power. So now we will discuss about this only. In the Security Council, these five permanent members have been given veto power, and the main reason to give veto powers to them was to bring about stability in the world. And what we see that this is the privileged condition for the permanent members, because the non-permanent members are not having the veto power. Moreover, they can serve only for 2 years at a time, and they cannot be re-elected immediately after completing a term of 2 years. So the non-permanent members have, if we compare the powers of both types of members of the Security Council, we find that non-permanent members are very having a very less power. So in this, we have already discussed that the all Security Council proceeds by voting. Any decision is taken by Security Council through voting, and all members, all the permanent and non-permanent members have one vote. And what happens that the permanent members can vote in a negative manner, so that even if all other permanent and non-permanent members vote for a particular decision, any permanent member's negative vote can stall the decision. It can stop the decision to be taken. This negative vote is the veto. So there many times it is demanded that this veto should be abolished, or there should be any kind of modification in the veto. But actually, if we see it in the practice, there will it is not possible. First of all, the permanent members will never going to agree to such a reform. They are not going to accept this kind of reform, because this reform will um, stop their position, stop them for being in a superior position. At present, they are these five countries are in the superior position than other countries of the United Nations. And if this veto power is not there, then they will become equal to other member countries, and this will never be acceptable to the permanent members of the UN. Then, though the main reason for adopting this veto power, the main reason for giving the veto power to the permanent members of the Security Council was this that the main object of the international organization was to bring stability, was to bring peace in the world. And in order to bring peace in the world, the most important role is played by these powerful countries. These five countries, it was considered that these five countries will play the most important role in bringing peace and stability in the world because they are the most powerful. And if veto is abolished, then in that case, what will happen? That these great powers they will lose interest in the world body. They will they are interested in taking part of the proceedings of the international organization. They are actively involved in the decisions of the United Nations because they have a superior position. They feel that their position is very much superior to other countries, and this gave them a kind of encouragement, a kind of motivation to have their participation in the world body. If this superior position, that is veto, if veto is removed, veto is abolished, then in that case, what will happen? That the great powers will stop taking part in the world body, and they will start doing whatever they want to do outside the world body. And in that situation, what will happen? That the world body will become ineffective, and these great powers which have started their activities outside the world body will may cause uh, mm, may cause any kind of conflict, and the world peace and security can be threatened. So, in order to gain the involvement of the great powers, in order to keep them interesting in the matters of world organization, it is very much important to give them a superior position. And this is the reason why veto has been given to these five powers. So this is the justification of veto. The question may be asked that why veto power should not be abolished, or give your argument in support of veto power. So this is the argument in support of veto power, and we have also argument against the veto power because it is undemocratic. The number of countries in the General Assembly has increased so much, but the uh, Security Council has only five permanent members. So this can be given as an argument against veto power. In this picture, we can see the use of veto power up to 2006 by permanent member. In this, we see that it is the USSR which have used the veto power most number of times. It is 122. Then USA which has used the veto power for 82 times, and UK 32 times, France 18 times, and China 4 times. So in this way we see that veto power is used by the great powers. Now, there is another demand for reform in the United Nations, and this demand is regarding the jurisdiction of the UN. It is said that the now the UN should stop playing the political function or political role. Instead of that, it should work more in the direction of environmental matters and economic matters. So, when UN completed 60 years of its existence, that was in the year 2005, what happened that it was celebrated, and the heads of all member states met in September 2005 in order to celebrate the anniversary, and they also wanted to review the condition of the UN. And in this meeting, the leaders decided some steps that must be taken in order to make UN more relevant, because the circumstances has changed a lot in this period of 60 years. So according to the change in the circumstances, there is a need to change in the jurisdiction of United Nations also. And in this regard, we see that these are the following points. These are the points which have been put together in order to reform the jurisdiction of the United Nations. The first is creation of a peace building commission. It is said that UN should create a peace building commission through which peace can be achieved, peace should be achieved in various parts of the world. Then the second is acceptance of the responsibility of the international community in case of failures of national government to protect their own citizens from atrocity. Actually, this is the step which deals with the problem. If there is some kind of problem in a country, and what we find that the national government uh, is adopting such policies and practices which are going against a particular group in the country, and the government is doing atrocities with its own citizen, with a particular group uh, in a country is targeted by the government, then in that case, it is the responsibility of the international community to intervene in the matter and protect that particular group from the atrocities of their own government. So it is asking for interference and intervention of international organization in case of atrocities within the national boundary, within a country. Okay. Now there is a third demand is establishment of a human rights council, and it also this step was executed, and it is operational since 19 June 2006. This is about the enforcement of human rights. If there is any kind of violation of a human right, then this human rights council will act in order to ensure human rights to all. Then agreement to achieve the Millennium Development Program. Millennium Development Program was adopted adopted for the year of 2015, and there was a Millennium Summit of the United Nations in 2000. In the year 2000, there was Millennium Summit, and in this summit, it was decided that eight international development goals were to be achieved by the year 2015, and these eight goals are we can many different types of goals has been uh, put in front of United Nations. For example, poverty should be ended, then universal primary education should be achieved, then gender equality and empowerment of women, reduction in child mortality, maternal health should be increased, then HIV, AIDS, and diseases like malaria, all these should be eradicated. Ensure environment sustainability. Environment should be uh, sustainable. And then in this way, uh, this Millennium Development Goal was put in front of United Nations, and through this anniversary, when they met for the anniversary of the UN, they decided to achieve these Millennium Development Goals. Then, condemnation of terrorism in all its form and manifestation. It was also one of the major function of the United Nations to condemn terrorism, and in whatever form it is manifested, that should be condemned. And then creation of a democracy fund. A fund should be created in order to promote the democracy. And agreement to wind up the trusteeship council. As we have I have told you earlier that as there are no country which is the colony of any country, so now trusteeship council has been abolished. So these are the issues which have been, these are the jurisdictions which have been included in the jurisdiction of the UN, but it is also not very easy to adopt, because the first is the creation of a peace building commission. Peace building, what will be the function of building commission? It is not clear. Then it is saying that if the government is doing atrocities against its own citizens, then the international community should intervene. In this case also, it will not be very clear to when to intervene in the internal matters of any country. So it is not easy to adopt. Then what should be the how it will interfere, and what should be the extent of interference? All these things are really not clear. Then it is said that human rights, in order to ensure human rights to all the people, there must be establishment of a human rights commission. So human rights commission, it is also very not easy to determine what are human rights, and where this violation of human rights is taking place, and what course of action should be taken in order to ensure human rights to all the people. So all these things are not easy. Then we saw that Millennium Development Goals was to be achieved, and it is also not an easy goal, as we see that there are still many countries which are developing, and these goals, Millennium Development Goals, are not realistic. They are very and they cannot be achieved in real sense of the term. So then terrorism is also very much difficult to condemn terrorism, because there is no agreement on a definition of terrorism. Then there is an issue that UN should make a democracy fund. Then how this fund can be used to promote democracy, all these things are not clear. So we can see that there is demand for the reform in the jurisdiction of UN, but there are many conflicts, and this is not very clear. Now we are coming to another new segment, and that is India and the UN reforms. But we see that India became the member of United Nations in the year 1945 only, that is on 30th of October. And since then, India has supported the United Nations on all grounds, and on almost all grounds, because India believes in the that there must be international peace and security must be maintained, and it is also one of the directive principle of state policy which is adopted by our constitution makers. So India has contributed a lot in the direction of world peace and security, and it is also the belief of India that UN should be there is need of reform in the United Nations. India also support that UN should play an enhanced role in the development, promoting development, and in order to achieve cooperation among states. India is of the opinion that the main agenda of the UN should be development, because if we want international peace and security, if we want to maintain international peace and security, then development is the precondition. If there will be problems in front in the field of economy, then there will not be maintenance of international peace and security. One of India's major concern has been the composition of the Security Council, because India is of the opinion that the membership of the UN General Assembly has expanded to a large extent. Uh, now at present there are 193 members in the General Assembly, but the Security Council has remained almost static. There used to be 11 members in the original charter of the UN. There was provision for 11 members. Now it has increased from 11 to 16, but 11 to 15. But this is not sufficient, because the size of the council need to be expanded more, and it is also argued by India that in the General Assembly of UN, what we find that there is majority of developing countries, and in the Security Council of United Nations, there is the superior position is being given to developed countries. So whatever decision is being taken by the Security Council will not get support of the all the member states, because member countries are developing, and the main decision making body is having majority of developed countries. So if we wanted to make the decisions taken by Secretary General more effective, and we want to execute it in a proper manner, then there is need of increase in the membership of the Security Council in such a manner that developing countries should also be included in the um, permanent members of United Nations Security Council. Actually, India supports that there should be increase in number of both permanent members as well as non-permanent members, and it is also said that it is also said by India that India itself wishes to be a permanent member in a restructured UN. Whatever is demanded by India that UN should be restructured, there should be increase in the number of permanent members. All the developing countries, the number of developing countries has increased very much, and they are not getting any kind of representation in the United Nations Security Council permanent membership. Then it will be, then in that case it will become less effective. So India is not only demanding that UN should be restructured, there should be more developing countries. There should be developing countries also in the permanent membership of the UN. India is also demanding that India should become a permanent member in the new Security Council. And for that purpose, the argument which is presented by India is that India is the second most populous country in the world, and moreover, India is the world's largest democracy, and India has always participated in the initiatives of the UN. India has always supported the decisions of the UN, and it has also played a great role in the peacekeeping force of the UN. So these are the arguments which is presented by India in order to gain permanent membership in the UN. Then another important argument which is presented by India, why India should get permanent membership in the UN. For that, India presents the argument that in on the economic front, India is emerging as a great power, and it is the most important claim by India. Then India also contribute in the finance of the UN, and whenever India has to make any payment, it has uh, mm, uh, never became any kind of delay was not done by India. So all these arguments are presented, and actually India, what India wants, India knows that if a country gets the permanent membership of the UN, then it will increase its influence in the world politics. So India wants to gain that membership. Uh, though India want to be a permanent member, but this desire of India will there are many obstruction in the fulfillment of this desire of India. The most important obstruction is the contentious relationship with Pakistan. India's relationship with Pakistan is very bad, and this is one of the hurdle in the path of getting permanent membership. Uh, then many countries are also of the view that India is a nuclear weapon country. So this that is also seen as an obstruction. Then what we find that India is if India is included, then other emerging powers will also demand like that, because there are many countries like Brazil, Germany, Japan, South Africa. They also want to be the permanent members of the Security Council, and they are not going to support India's membership. And it is also said that there are two continents, Africa and South America, from where no single country is represented in the present permanent members of the UN. So, if there is any kind of extension takes place, if any kind of reformation in the permanent membership takes place, then it must include countries from Africa and South America, because they are not represented. So, in this way, we find that it is not going to be an easy task for India or anyone else to become a permanent member of the UN in near future. Though we are demanding it, and we are also giving argument for that purpose, but it is not easy to be there, because so many hurdles are there. Now, we are in the last segment of the chapter, that is the UN in a unipolar world. The role played by United Nations organization in a unipolar world, that is the world where only America exists as the superpower. In that world, what role are we suppose are we expect from the UN to play? Now this will be discussed tomorrow, and at this moment I am just